you would be chayev if you took shemen reserved just for kelim and you put it on basar adam. But if the kohen's technically not a dam anymore.
At what point does it become a claim? Before you put the oil on,
Right.
after you put the
No,
oil?
you put it in the oven.
Right.
You're still chayav for it. When you're oven, you're still chayav for it. Whatever point you say becomes a kli, you're chayav for putting it on at any time. Except maybe going gadol, let's say.
4-1. Hang on.
Your kli was the other machine.
4-1. Kohanim, this is Kli HaMikdash again, 4-1. Kli HaMikdash, Kohanim huvdalu michlal halavim. The Kohanim are separated from the Leviim, la'avodas hakarbanos. That's their role. They don't have other stuff that's important, halachically. I mean, you know, the trumas and the maasros and the, what do you call it, the l'chaim, what am I thinking of?
Pidyon Haben.
Yeah, Pidyon Haben is related to it for sure. The Bechorah stuff for sure is related to it. Those are privileges. Those are privileges. But what their real task is la'avodas hakarbanos. Shenemar v'yavdil Aaron lahakdishay kodesh kodesh. Mitzvah sehi. That's a positive commandment. Lahavdil hakohanim, to separate the kohanim, ulekadsham, and to mishchalem, ulahachnis lekarban, and to send them in to do that carbon work. Shnemar kidashto ki esalechem elakecha hu makri. And then the Rama goes on, talk about you have to give them kavod and so on and so on. Number 10. 4-9. 4-9. Very interesting. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't answer your question. Before, yeah, yes,
Me?
yeah.
I don't understand how you learned that Kohanim are equivalent to Kalim from the halacha about Leviim.
Is that related?
Yeah, but
Remember that Kohanim are presumed to be
Does it-
Levim. When
yeah, but-
we separate the Levim of Avodas HaKodesh, the Kohanim are
until-
kolel in
But
that.
until now, you were talking about how Kohanim are special in their Kalim, and then you moved into this halacha about Leviim, which isn't very nice proof. It could prove about Kohanim also, but it seems like if you're proving about Leviim too, the
So
Kohanim are
you
really
want a
special.
more accurate definition of Kohanim as Levim? Okay, it's a fair question. It's not in my head, but it's a fair question. But generally, we understand Kohanim to be Levim.
Right away, it still includes more people.
Right, I think
Maybe.
to like sharpen her point a little
Yeah.
bit, right, would you say that Levium are Kalim also?
Yeah,
So does that help?
yeah, I would say so, yes. Yes.
Just a direct response and then a question. The direct response to the points that Ramacha made is that I looked up the Gemara that the Chutzmi Davar Echad is from,
Yeah,
and
Is it
that Gemara
Yevamos?
also, it's in Bechorot.
like I said, Bechoros.
And it says, "V'chein ben Levi shabal kabel divrei Levia, v'kohen shabal kabel divrei Kuna, Chutzmi Davar Echad." So the Gemara does have both there, even though Rambam does not. And the question that I had is
Oh, that's
that
good. Just that helps, supports what I'm saying, yeah.
the question I had about what you were saying about people who can't be judged is that, are we talking about all types of judgment, or are we just talking about judgment by people? I mean, because like, is the person who does something b'onas still chayav in some way b'dei shamayim?
That's an interesting question.
Especially because the Rambam is talking about edim ha'tra'ah, he's specifically
That's
talking
an
about the
interesting
courts.
question. That broadens the issue. So, if the guy goes to, in Auschwitz, goes to Rabbi Oshry, right? And he says, Rabbi Oshry, I'd like to offer myself to the Nazis and that way they'll keep my kid alive. Is it okay halachically to do so? Rabbi Asher said, I can't answer you. I can't answer you. There's no answer to that question. Okay? Which means that you can't. And he's right on that. Okay? So now, the guy does it, right? And he goes to the gas chamber that day. Okay, so we don't what? Judge him. But you're saying he comes to Shemayim, and Hashem is sitting there. And what's Hashem gonna say? Excuse me, you asked the Shiloh, you didn't listen to the Shiloh, what's the matter with you? You're supposed to be from you. So the answer is we don't know what a Kadosh Baruch Hu would say, but I'd like to predict that he would not judge either. Because if we're not free, the deal we have with the Kadosh Baruch Hu is that when given the choice, and we have free choice, we'll make the right one. That's what we said at Har Sinai. That's what we said at Har Sinai. That's the whole thing with Har Sinai. Give us a choice, we'll make the right choice. But only if what? If it's a non-coercive situation. All right, let me finish off here, because you're going to get impatient with me. 4:9, what was I doing? Never mind, skip that one. Let's go to Maseh HaKarbanos. Hilchos Maseh HaKarbanos, Perek Gimel. Halachas Aleph to Gimel. Okay. Maseh HaKarbanos, what did I say?
Perek Gimel.
Chaf Gimel. No, it couldn't be Chaf Gimel. Must be Perek Gimel, yeah. Perek Gimel. This is about smicha. Yeah. Shnayim shiratzu lahavi shlomim o ola b'shutfus mevi'in ben beneder ben benedava yafilu of yava b'shutfus. So you can bring a korban with a partner. V'yechad anashim v'yechad nashim o avadim. Interesting, right? Men or women or avadim can bring all of the korbanos. Aval ha'akum ein mekablim mehem. Ela olos bilvad. We only accept olos from what? From the goy. Shenemar miyad ben necher los agrivos as lechem Elohechem. But nonetheless, the akum has full credibility here. Afilu olos ha'ov mekablim min hanachri afal pishu oved avodah zarah. Even though and birds were used for idolatrous purposes more than cows, I suppose. אבל אין מקבלים מהם שלמים ולא מנוחס ולחד והשמס וכן אולוס שאין בעוז בנדר, okay? גימל. הנוחרי שהביא שלמים מקריבין אוסן אולוס שהעקים ליבו לשמיים. Then nether, here it is. Nether shlamim. Nodar shlamim. He was another a carbon shlamim. V'nasnam liYisrael al manas sheyischaper b'hem liYisrael, and he's giving them to a Yisrael because the Yisrael needs kapara. Ochlin also haYisraelim kishalmei Yisrael. The Jew can eat it like the shalmei Yisrael. V'chein im nasnam laKohen Kohen achlam. Okay, what's my point here? No, I don't have the right. I've learned this. Perek Gimel. Halachas. The point is, in this chapter, I'm not gonna read it to you word for word. In this chapter, the Rambam says that the halacha works out that the main halacha of the person who is bringing the olah or the chatas is the smicha. He takes his hands, woman, a man, doesn't matter, puts it on the head of the animal and pushes. And somewhere in the course of that, he is also, if he's bringing the chatas, what does he do? Vidur. He does vidur. What's fascinating is that the Kohen has all kinds of jobs of the blood and the fire and the basic, the 4 steps, not all of which he's involved in. What are the 4 steps? Shchita, Kabbalah, Halicha, and Zrika. Those are the 4 steps. And analogous steps and he's involved in some, though not all of them. But the key step, certainly in an olah or a chatas, is the smicha. And the Kohen, in terms of what we want to get out of the carbon, Kohen has no role. And what that means is of course, that he's Kli HaMikdash. He's just another bowl. But more interesting is that the Kohen is not a holy man. He is not doing anything for you. He is not effecting your kapara. He is a what? A catalyst, sure. He is a supporter, sure. He is an enabler. But he is not a holy man. And when Lahavdil Elef Havdalas, the church made its priests what? Holy men. It's the priest that causes you kapara. They completely went back to what? To pagan stuff that the Torah was precisely trying to get away from. That's a very priest, not Kohen, excuse me, is not a holy. Not in the sense that he has powers that you don't have. Chas v'shalom. That's one of the big lessons here. Almost done. Two more points, then I'm done. Done with the Rambam. 2 more points. I think that worth waiting for. Mumin Elu, this is from the 7th chapter of Mishnayos Becharos, Ben Kuhim, Ben Ovrim, Psulim Ba'adam. The following, the Mishnah says, are the flaws in Kohanim that are puzzle And of course they are puzzle. And the previous chapter had a whole section on what are the common mumim between what? Animals and people that disqualify them. Okay, so now we're getting more sophisticated here, and we're talking about the various kinds of mumin that puzzle you. Zion Hay, chapter 7, Mishnah 5. Here are some of them. I'm not going to read you the whole chapter, what all the moving are, but this one's is interesting. I'm reading from the Kahati in English because I don't know what half these women mean. I mean, I would have to go 50 times to really remember what they are, so it's much easier. If his upper lip overlaps the lower, or the lower overlaps the upper, this is a blemish. It's a mum. If his teeth fell out, he is unfit because of what? Marisai. Yeah. Marisai. He looks terrible. If his breasts hang down like a woman's, his belly is swollen, his navel juts out, he is epileptic, even if infrequently melancholia comes upon him. Well, tell me that isn't interesting. A Kohen who is what? Subject to fits of depression. Every mum in the entire chapter is what? Every mum in the entire chapter is physical. Yeah, you getting interested?
I was gonna ask you if depression is physical.
This is the question.
Oh, okay.
This is the question. Because what's depression? What's depression? All of the criteria in the Mishnah, and the Mishnahs around there are all physical. Rambam says that the deeper marashchara, listen to this, affects his grooming. Right? What happens to depressed people? They let themselves go. They let themselves go. And so therefore it's a question of Marisayan, and it's no different, you know, that's, how does he know that? Where does he get that from? That's not a chazal. And then, I wrote here, the Rambam says that the deeper marashchara affects his grooming, and so he looks like hell. And this would answer but others related to, listen to this, to falling, the Ramban, others, falling into an illness that puts you to bed. Now what is that related to, brothers and sisters? Illness that puts you to bed. When you have an illness that puts you to bed, what don't you have to do?
Fast.
Fast on
Okay, but
and yeah, of course. Of course. So they're still trying to keep it what? Physical. Trying to keep it physical. I would argue with the great Rishonim, with the greatest humility, and say this is only to make the Torah greater, and to say that a person who is depressed doesn't have choice. dealt with depressed people. I have a lot. Most depressed population in the United States are students. If you are depressed, you don't have choices. And this is Kli HaMikdash. Interesting. It's the chair. Interesting.
But isn't it true that a depressed person can't serve? So if the depressed person is the chair.
It's a mum.
Right, but, right, so then he's not a Kli.
Well, we can't choose to become a
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. That's more accurate, thank you. So now, the Gemara in Kiddushin, Perek HaChomer, Samach Vav on the base. What's one of the scriptural bases for a Kohen who has a mum, right? Not being permitted to do the avodah? Gemara and what I say, Kiddushin, Perek HaOmer, Samach Vav on the base says, the Hineni no saying lecha. What did we read as brisi? What? Okay. What do you know about the vav? It's broken, right? The vav in shalom is broken. You get the whole thing of shalom versus shalom, and there's a lot of Torah on that. But it says vav the shalom k'tiyahi. The Gemara says the vav in shalom is what? Is broken. The medaresh kishahu shalom. I can't read my writing. The kishahu chaser. Mikan lekohen Baalei Mum she'avodaso psula. So the breaking, the having, that's not having, it's nistak, it's chopped through, is an indication that if it's not shalom, come what? You can't do the avodah. So you have a sense, it's an agadic sense, because no one accepts this lumdus, that's the basis for the whole mum. The Torah itself says that mum kohanim can't do. But it's an interesting agadic drush. And I want to end really with a sfas emes, which is one of my 500 favorite sfas emeses, where he says, talks about shalom. He says that Samu et Shemi al b'nei Yisrael, what does it say? V'ani avarachem. He says, it's like this. I want to give you a bracha that you should find, you should win the lottery. You should find mamish the right guy, that you have 200 children. So the sfas emes asks the question, what's a bracha? Okay? If you were a millionaire, I would not give you a bracha for parnasa. Right? When you need a bracha, what do you need it for? Come on. Something that's what? Lacking. Something that's missing. That's what a bracha is. And if somebody gives you a bracha for something you already have, you know he doesn't know your soul. Oh, it's a simon. So we give you a bracha for something that's lacking. Sfas emes asks the question, where's the bank? you're missing, I'm making this up, okay? I don't want to insult you. You're missing a good zikar. Let's say. I'm sure you have a terrific zikar. But let's say you're missing a zikar. Where's the bank? I want to give him a bracha that whatever he sees, he should remember. Where's the bank that I go to find his bracha? So Hashem says there are banks on 3 levels. Great Hasidic categories: Olam, Shana, and Nefesh. Right? So he says the name of the bank is what? Where nothing is missing and everything is there. What's the name of the bank? The name of the bank is Shalom. Shalom means nothing is missing. That's what the word Shalom means. He says there are 3 banks, there are 3 categories of banks: Olam, Shana, and Nefesh. Olam is where is the bank in the world, right? Where is the bank? Where is the bank in space, in the world? And he answers, Yeru Shalom. Shana is in time. Where is the bank in time?
Shabbos.
Shabbos, because we say Shabbos. Maybe you never heard this. It's possible that.
Reading.
Well, it's a bracha,
Okay.
and he knew it. And he's writing in 19th century Ger right outside Warsaw. He knows about this.
I mean, you say Shalom.
Okay. And that's Olam, Shana, and Nefesh. Nefesh, in other words, what am I saying? I'm saying that in the case of Olam, if I want to go to the bank and find whatever it is that you are missing, I go to Shabbos, and somewhere in Shabbos all the brachas are there. Doesn't miss anything. And if I want to go and get a bracha for him to have an amazing zikaron because he's missing that, I can go to Shabbos, or I can also go to the Kotel because it's Yeru Shalom. That's why people go to the Kotel. And then it also exists in Olam, Shana, and Nefesh in the person. Where does it exist in the person? Answer: Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yaseim lecha shalom. Exists in the Kohen. Kohen is a repository of bracha. So I spent the whole shir, in some ways, reducing the Kohen to a bowl. But there's something else going on that has to balance this, right? And that the Kohen has been put aside not as much by us and by HaKadosh Baruch Hu and by himself. And he becomes a repository for brachas. How do I know that? Because Kohanim give brachas. Kohanim give brachas. And that's it. Yes?
So, fundamentally though, your point remains that the reason the Kohen can't have a mum is because he's a Kli, right?
Yeah.
But yet, Leviim are also Kalim.
You're asking me whether Leviim who have a mum could do whatever avoda they did?
I think they could do the whatever they did.
There's certainly discussion with that, and it's not an open and shut case. It's not an open and shut case.
Well, assuming that they could, what would that mean?
Let's say that a Levi, if the Kohen, right, is the symbol of perfect man, flawless man, he's a symbol of it. I didn't talk about that.
Yeah.
But he's because the Mumim spell that out, that he's got to look perfect. Halach is about how often he takes a haircut. I mean, very careful. He has to take a haircut. Melech takes a haircut. This time, Kohen is very, very careful. So he's the perfect, the symbol of human perfection, of physical human perfection, where nothing is missing. The Levi is not that. The Levi is not that. The Levi put his life aside to live a life of Kedusha, yes, and that's why he has rights to Trumas and Meisers, because he's not expected to earn a living. But he is not the symbol of a perfect man. And there's probably something going on with Aaron versus Pinchas on this whole issue worth looking at, but not for now. It's good, it's a good point. Other questions? Yeah,
Well, so then the reason, what are you talking about?
it's okay, go ahead.
No. I just felt.
So we said the reason that Chazal treat Baal Mum this way is because they're Kohanim and they're vessels. But Chazal also have statements about Mumim for people who are non-Kohanim. So how would you explain those? Like that Asumas Pator from Mitzvot. Like how would you explain their treatment to Mumim in other instances of people who aren't Kohanim?
Chazal don't say that people with mumim, people whose mum takes away free choice, maybe you have an argument that they would say they're pater of mitzvahs. So you have the cheresh, summa cheresh combinations that they say are pater, but it's very interesting. It's a very important question because today that's changing. Islam is changing in halacha. And Rav Benny Lau just wrote a marvelous tshuva on a deaf couple, how to do kiddushin for them. And it's changing, and everyone liked Rav Lau's tshuva. It wasn't, radical or over the edge at all, and it's just sane. And this is now the 21st century, and we're not in the same place, and we can deal with these things different. And they're not every deaf and dumb person is an idiot, and we all know about what's her name?
Helen Keller.
Pardon?
Helen Keller?
Yeah. Not what's her name? Helen
Keller.
Helen Keller. Yeah, Helen Keller. And we know all, but so it's a different time. It's a different time. So I wouldn't get too stuck there. Now, what was your question about women?
No.
Oh, okay. Sir.
Yeah, so I guess as a version of Miriam Cole's question, let's leave aside the question of how convincing we find or don't find Rabbi Lau's tshuva on analysis, because we're going to do the tshuva you sent me, which is not quite that one. It's about deaf witnesses. So if you sent, I'll look through the list. Do you think that I think it's hard to deny that there are lots of areas in halakha, certainly in the past, in which people with physical disabilities, ranging from physical blemishes to loss of sense capacity, were not treated with the presumption of complete equality. So now you're saying we can change these. So is that your general
question?
aspiration?
The master on this was the Tzitz Eliezer, Rav Waldenberg's Kohanim Baalei Mum, who just said, brothers, the 14th century is behind us. Finally, and we really living in different times. Our knowledge of medicine and what medicine can do is incomparable to any other time in history, and we have to adjust to it. And there's stuff that Chazal didn't know, and we can't continue to live as if nothing happened. Yeah.
So I think Cherishim, besides Cherishim, is a solvable issue in that we can claim that we have a difference in practical knowledge. The issue is more, so let's say, we'll talk about this tomorrow, but we'll
Status.
Let's talk about Rabbi Lau in his response to let's say the piece we're reading now. So he mentions Perish, that's one of his lead cases. We'll talk about that. But I think this way, now Shir is even shorter tomorrow. I think it's easily distinguishable because that's a change in practice. What's different about the 21st century and the 14th is that deaf mute people can do things they couldn't do previously, or at the very least, we know that deaf people can do things they couldn't do. But we can say to ourselves, if Rabbeinu Tam knew what we knew, he would have done the same thing. The other case he talks about, though, is Kohanim in wheelchairs, who are puzzled according to the overwhelming array, let's assume, of poskim, because they can't stand, and modern medicine doesn't make them able to stand. So there we have a halakha that flat out discriminates against people in wheelchairs.
You mean discriminates?
Pardon?
You discriminates.
So I'm asking you, so you're saying that's about Kohanim. But so you can distinguish that Kohanim giving, although, right, we could say, so Kohanim giving the bracha all of a sudden become Kalim, even though Kohanim Baalei Mum are allowed to give to Nesiya Kapayim, that's a little harder. Then what about, let's say, do you presumptively reject, there's a machloket that we're doing now between let's say, it's the Maharam who says that the Sulam of Kohanim to be Shliach Tzibur don't apply, the Mum of Kohanim don't apply to Shliach Tzibur, and the Zohar, which says very clearly, it seems that physical blemish is possible as Shliach Tzibur. So do you have a presumption that we ought to paskin like the Shitot?
I think we should paskin like the Zohar when we can.
Against the Zohar. The Zohar, the one that says that physical blemishes matter. The Maharam says that physical blemishes don't.
Whatever. The role of the Zohar in Psak. It's a very interesting question. When the Chassam Sofer did a series of tshuvas, ad ema arvim divrei halacha and divrei kabbalah, he wasn't talking about the Nevi'im, like the Rambam is when he talks about divrei kabbalah. He's talking about the Zohar. And you have to be very careful if you can develop a halachic case that is sympathetic to the Zohar, you go with it. I've always said that.
Okay,
Anybody who
I'm not
writes
interested-
Shemay is not all bad.
I'm not interested in the Zohar case. I'm interested in whether you think there is a presumption that if there are two ways to paskin, one of which creates distinctions on the basis of physical appearance or ability, one of which does not. So the premise of your fear is that discrimination against Baalei Mum requires justification. So is it therefore your contention that given two otherwise, if you have two plausible halakhic options, just in the text, one of which distinguishes among people on the basis of physicality, one of which doesn't, that since the position that doesn't distinguish doesn't require moral justification, and the position that does distinguish requires moral justification, that the default psak ought to be we don't discriminate.
I don't think I don't set the problem up that way. See, I think that if somebody for whatever reason is pater min a mitzvah, that's not a put down.
I think
That's
pater
not
is
a
one
put
thing,
down.
and able, but what about being shliach tzibur? That's not a question of tour. That's a question of whether the tzibur ought to nominate.
We just learned that the Kohen represents human perfection.
Yeah.
So some guy, going up there with crutches and one leg is not a symbol of human perfection. And that's going on, and he's pater. It's not not about being asur. I don't think anybody would throw a guy down if he had one leg and he was duchening. But they don't. I've actually seen Eretz Yisrael, a Kohen duchening with a soldier came back with one leg. And if he's wearing a, what do you call it? A prosthetic device, yeah, and you don't see it, I don't think it would be a problem, off the top of my head. You have to understand that there are criteria under which you're mechuyev, and criteria where you're not mechuyev. And to start talking about usher is a whole different discussion. I don't think a lot of people are talking about usher.
No, I think, let's say lechatchila, most of the literature we say talks about lechatchila and b'diavad. So they're explicitly conceding it's not asur, and nonetheless, they say that, let's say somebody says, given a choice, you would rather have the community be represented to God by somebody who symbolizes human perfection.
I'm not sure what the origins are. I've had a lot of trouble with this concept, that the Shliach Tzibur is the representative of the community to God. It comes up in Hilchos Tshuva, where we talk about who could be the Chazan for Yom Kippur. I've had trouble really tracing that and saying that's what the Chazan is doing. I have a different sense of Chazan. Chazan is telling you where everybody is davening, holding the davening, rather than any kind of representation. And that has certainly been the way that the modern Jewish community has gone. There are very few shuls with Chazans. It's all very democratic. Yeah.
But Shliach Tzibor means Shliach of the congregation.
That's not a raya. It's polite. It's nice. Would really have to look at the history of the literature, see when that phrase came in. I mean, a lot of surprises out there. Did you know that Yizkor wasn't said 400 years ago?
No.
Yeah. Stuff comes up, and rabbis take liberties, and this stuff starts to come in and becomes Kodesh. I mean, you know about bar mitzvahs, right? In Warsaw, in 1920s, there was nothing going on like we have going on now. Stuff changes, and people take. So to answer your question, I would have to do a study of when the word Shliach Tzibur started. Is it in the Gemara? What sense is it being used? And then maybe.
It's in the Sechatani. Shliach Tzibur, it's mentioned in the Sechatani, and they give requirements for characteristics of Shliach Tzibur.
Yes.
So it's not a new concept.
So it's not a new concept. Yes, I just learned it. I should know. Yeah. So when you were learning it, did you see Anenu? All Anenu laid out? Yeah. Surprises there. Yeah. I have to look at it. What else? Anything else? I know everything.
Okay, thank you very, very much
Pleasure.
for